Reddit threads. They can range from being funny, interesting, or downright disturbing. In this video, we'll be discussing a user's descent after inviting what they called the Shadow Man back into their life. This is my story, a story that started as a playful friend my parents and myself boiled down to an imaginary one. But in years to come, that would prove otherwise. I will try to recount it to the best of my ability, but as each year passes, this becomes a distant memory. All but those last terrifying nights that are still alive when I close my eyes. I don't remember when or how I met this friend. Maybe it was in the 100-year-old home I got to live in for a short period of time before my parents abruptly moved away due to odd happenings. In the home that began to drive my mother insane. A home that still stands now. Upon arrival, this home offered an attic and basement full of toys, more toys than any modest child could hope to have, newer and old toys alike. Being a child in a hardened family of 8 kids, I suddenly had it all at the age of 7. We never asked why the old home was filled with so many toys, but my father said not to look a gift horse in the mouth. I don't remember much from that home, but my father and now estranged mother have vivid memories of the doors opening and closing, the sound of children's laughter up and down the halls, and the voice of a man and woman who would talk happily in the dead of night. When we left, I don't recall ever taking any toy with me, but it is my earliest memory of when I started to play with my imaginary friend. For many years, it followed, and I adored him. I never felt alone. Not one moment. At first I couldn't see him, I only felt him. I would talk openly to the air as if someone was listening. My parents were convinced, and I too, this was childish play, yet it felt right. More right than when I spoke to dolls. I adored him until that night at the age of 12, when I went to sleep and had a terrible dream. A tall, thin, shadowy figure standing and watching from afar, watching me until I ran for fear of my life, and it followed. I couldn't escape. I woke up and refused to go to school for 3 days or leave my bed. The dreams would not end. Every night, I would always fall at the end of it. When I would fall, he would be there at the bottom watching. I boiled it down to hardships of my family during the divorce. I later moved into a home with my grandparents. It was there that the worst began. After the divorce, I became a shell of the child I was before. I escaped to the internet on a computer in the corner of the living room, where I would play well into the early hours of the morning. It started as a shift in the corner of my eye at around 2 to 3 a.m. The time it would show itself each night. Something would draw my attention to the opening into the kitchen, where only a few short steps was the garage door. The hairs on the back of my neck would stand. I would feel a sudden sense of fear, panic, and need to run and hide. I shook this off as a silly fear of the dark. I would try to ignore it and look back to my screen, but still, something would shift and I would look again, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. Time passed and I continued to ignore it. It seemed to invite it even more. Eventually, that shift was a full movement. I could make out a head, shoulders, torso, arms from my peripheral vision, but never a face. It would seem to sneak carefully out from behind the wall, first its head poking out and watching, and then it would step out into the doorway. At this point, I came to the solemn conclusion that I was simply insane. I decided to accept this with dignity, and not run around appearing crazy to my family talking of shadows and bumps in the night. I let it continue. As it got bolder, it would walk from the doorway closer to me, and I would stare at the computer screen and dismiss it, continuing chatting with people online. One night, it came so close, my vision became enveloped in darkness, and when I blinked my eyes, I was standing in the doorway watching myself on the computer, exactly where it stood. I began to panic. I reached out for me, and when I came back to, 5 minutes had passed and I had a full conversation undisturbed with someone I was talking to online. He said nothing seemed weird about me and had to reread our conversation. Nothing was off about what I had written. Now convinced I was entirely insane, I hid further into myself. My father, who had resided with us, and grandparents became increasingly worried. I was ashamed of my apparent insanity. Then the fateful night came. Instead of me sitting in the living room at 3 a.m., I was in the shower, and my father was in the living room playing a game on the TV. When I came out of the shower, I saw my dad staring at the screen. He was as pale as a ghost, and his eyes were rounded in fear. I asked him what was wrong, and in a shaken voice, he explained that a man had walked out from behind the wall from the garage. And in response, my dad had jumped up and chased that man into the garage with chopsticks with the intent to threaten his life. But then he followed it into the garage, and there was nothing. Doors locked, everything sealed, just a sickening feeling as he stood in the empty room. I was beginning to cry now. As I asked him to describe what it looked like, he proceeded to explain: a tall, thin man with no face to be seen, peeking out from the opening then stepping out. Suddenly, I wasn't insane, but this was far worse than insanity. This shadow wasn't the creation of a demented mind dropping into delusions, but a very real occurrence that others could see and hear. It was more real than ever, and I never felt more fear in my life. I immediately moved all my stuff from the living room to the furthest room in the house from that garage door, and decided I would hide there henceforth. I thought it wouldn't go that far. I thought I was safe if all the lights were on. I thought it would be okay if I had others in the room with me. I was wrong. That next night, as if moving my stuff brought it further in, right on time, just before 3 a.m., I heard the creaking of the floorboards down the hallway from me. It was so heavy, creaking slowly, as if attempting to be quiet but failing. As it drew near, the door left ajar. Only my grandfather could make the floorboards creak as heavily as that, and he was also a 230-pound man. Hearing that familiar sound, I called out with a smile to him. The creaking came to a dead stop. I laughed, thinking I caught the old man. I stood from my chair ready to greet him when the creaking turned, and I listened to the floorboards slam loudly with the sound of someone or something running to the back of the house. It ran so fast I knew it couldn't be my grandfather, who could barely walk without losing his breath. In fact, the speed was almost inhuman. Then I heard the familiar sound of the garage door opening and closing. Hesitant, I called out louder for my grandmother, a woman who could run if she wanted to. In my delusion, I somehow convinced myself she was a possibility. I don't know what came over me, but I left the comfort of my room and walked into the dark hallway. I followed him with a blind sense of security that I was following my grandmother. I walked with such confidence it wasn't even me. I walked into the living room, into the doorway, where I stopped in front of the garage door. My blood turned to ice. I turned to look behind me out the window of the living room to see that my grandparents' car was gone, as they always left around 2:20 a.m. for the early shift at the hospital. They were not home. Everyone was asleep. When I looked back at the garage door, the door that I had locked shortly before hiding in my room was ajar an inch, and still, the locking mechanism was engaged. I stared into the darkness and stepped closer. Every hair in my body was on end, and every part of me screamed to run, and for the first time since I was younger, I spoke to it. I said in a shaky voice, "I don't know who you are or what you are, but you are scaring me. Please go away." I shut the door and walked back to the room where I stayed awake for the rest of the night. Nothing would happen for many months. I thought it was gone, and for the first time, I felt alone. Later in a new house, only 6 months after this happened, the feeling of being alone became overwhelming, and before laying to sleep, I asked for it to come back. I convinced myself it must have been a friend that I scared off, that it was simply its mystery scaring me. And if I gave it a second chance, I could understand it. I woke up in the middle of that night, unable to move, petrified, an unbearable weight of fear as I repeated with desperation to myself, "I take it back, go away. I take it back, go away," again and again until I blacked out. The next morning, I woke up with an enormous, dark, oddly shaped bruise on my leg, a crescent moon with a dot centered by it. That bruise never went away, though it has faded since then. That spot on my leg is still a slight shade darker than the surrounding area. Since then, my life has been overall normal, though I can't dismiss the occasional odd occurrence, from a shadow walking across the lawn in broad daylight, to the sound of a screeching howl in my home a few feet away from me while my 2 dogs rested at my feet. Those were only brief and did not shake me, not like the thing that followed me through most of my formative years. I don't know what that was. I don't try to know. Ghosts, aliens, spirits, demons, temporary insanity, the list goes on. All I know is that it happened, and I miss it. As scared as I am of it, I would also like to add, if anyone has had any similar experiences, I would like to reach them. This has been something that has haunted my thoughts, and a part of me can't rest until I know. I plan to revisit these 2 homes between the hours of 2 to 4 a.m. in a month or 2. I don't know what this will bring. Maybe nothing. Maybe more than I'm prepared for. But I have to know. Despite growing up being tormented by this shadow figure, a part of her can't let this go. And that's what leads us to our first update. I called to the shadow figure last night, and it answered. "Hey guys, I posted earlier about my history with the shadow figure, and now it's been many years since I've had contact with it. Last night, I think I managed to call it back. I'm vacationing in an RV in a national park with my significant other who bears witness. I was having a hard time last night, and we were fighting, with so many other things happening at once. I was very distraught, so when he walked away, I felt something in my heart I haven't felt in years, a painful pull, a desire. So I called out to it. I asked if it ever really left when I asked it to, and if it hasn't, show itself to me. I then felt an urge to go outside, and I followed the need. It was 1:36 a.m., in the middle of a national park. I walked outside for about 50 feet until I stopped and fear gripped me. I turned back and went inside. My husband immediately asked me what I was doing, and while crying, I told him. I asked him to come back, and just as I finished my words, the RV came to life, and we heard heavy, fast footsteps outside the trailer, and not 4-legged animal steps. It was 2 feet. It walked around the trailer to the door. We heard the creak of the steps as the RV floors moaned and the walls creaked. My husband became infuriated with me and demanded why I would ask for it to come back. As he grabbed a knife, I begged him to stop and I held him back as we listened to the creaking. I explained I know this thing, and a knife won't do anything. I quickly changed my heart due to fear and begged it not to come in and to stay outside where the motion sensor lights outside were blinked on. The last we heard of it was its steps outside the RV come up to the door of the RV and stop. No footsteps were ever heard walking away, and the floor outside is covered in dead leaves, branches, and other debris. So unless a highly trained individual just slapped their feet outside then decided to fox walk away from the RV in the dead of night, I think I actually managed to call it back. It just disappeared. I'm going to try again tonight. I'm both afraid and excited and hope that I can bring it back, and this time, let it in and actually speak to it. If anyone else has experiences with shadow figures, please do reach out to me. I want to know what this is and what I'm getting myself into pursuing it. On my second attempt, with my partner standing behind me, I disappointingly got no response at all. It never came before when others were around, or even awake nearby, so that could have been an obvious result. I had just hoped I didn't have to do this alone. Only problem is I get so terrified when it comes back, I push it away. I can never keep my cool. So I'm going to try this again, but this time with my Rottweiler. It came before with animals, but they were 10-pound cats, not a 100-pound Rottweiler. My boy has proven to keep his cool when odd things happen in the past, so this might give me the confidence I need to go outside at 1:30 to 3 a.m. and call it to me. If that doesn't work after multiple attempts, I'll do it entirely alone, but this is a last resort. I'm planning on keeping audio and video recordings if possible. If anyone has any advice or experience, contact me. Now that I got it back once, I'm set on calling it again. I won't give up until I find a way. In the comments of this thread, a commenter asks exactly how are you calling it to you. The OP responds, I can't exactly put it down to a step-by-step on how I call it. I'm not 100% on it. I know that I get this feeling in my chest from time to time, usually when I'm lost and alone, when I'm seeking out for help. It's tight, familiar, and heavy, like a stone, but it's warm. I sink into that feeling. I accept it as much as I can until it overwhelms me and I speak to it. When I called into the RV, I stopped my crying as I felt it in my chest, and the argument blurred to the background as I focused on the darkness outside at an exact spot. I asked in a hushed voice under my breath, are you there? If you're there, I will go outside and I will meet you. I welcomed it. I wanted it. That's really the key phrase here, is welcoming something to you. In my experience, it responded strongest the more I believed and permitted in it. And the strongest responses were when I believed it so much. I felt real fear. The closer I got to believing it, the more afraid I became, the stronger its intentions became. For a long time after this last comment, there was radio silence, and then a year later, the OP finally came back for one last update. I'm writing this at 3:46 a.m. because it hasn't ended and I can no longer sleep through the night anymore. I don't know what they want. I don't know what will happen to me. All I know is I'm trying to keep what is happening to me documented, so if something happens to me, there's some record of it. I will list the major points that have happened thus for in chronological order the best I can, just so it is noted. I did reach out for help to others that may understand what is happening to me. I received offers for investigators to come out to my house, but it seems it's not that simple for this case, so help has been scarce, leaving me pretty much stranded and alone. Not long after the first experience occurred, I lived in New Jersey, all the way from California, where it had originally started. From the moment I arrived, I was set at unease with being here. I wasn't wrong to feel that, and it had led me into dark places. At first, I couldn't stop staring into the forest across my hotel room late at night between 12 and 4 a.m. I was obsessed with staring out at it. I would sometimes be so drawn to it, I would leave my hotel room in the snow, just to stare from outside the building. I couldn't explain it when I was asked. I just wanted to stare. Later, when I moved into temporary housing for the company my fiance worked for, I found myself in a similar trance with a large park down the street. Just like the night in the trailer, I felt drawn to just wander out in the middle of the night to it. I started to see light, absence of a source, moving about, as if they were blobs of vague life morphing around. Sometimes, they would be slow and cautious, other times, sprinting. Then one night, while sitting outside, my family beside me, I watched them spring to life, running down the street behind the house, moving about as if they were children on a play set. I was amused, unafraid. My younger sister saw them. She was less amused. After I finally swallowed my pride and researched about what I was seeing, I found reports, books, historical imagery, testimonies to everything I had been seeing, that others could describe exactly what I had been seeing, down to the very T. I was convinced. It was time I admitted what was happening. I needed to share it with those closest to me. That would be the night of my downfall. It started simple. I walked them beside me, pointing to places I was seeing them and feeling them. My family kept an open mind and heart. Further through the night, it began. First, it was the shadow and light figures. My younger sister could see them with me. The other members of my family could not see them, only hear them. It was then I saw something new. I saw a small gray form, tangible compared to the shadows and lights, as if actually a part of this reality, poking its head curiously from around the doorway outside. I was still unafraid. I was amazed, like a child in a magic show. I saw it a second time not long after that, this time poking its head out from the upper doorframe outside, as if it was a lizard that can crawl on the walls. My amazement didn't end that night, all the way even to the point where the chandelier in front of my family violently swung from side to side, as if something had knocked the entire frame with great force. I was overjoyed that my family could see it for once, and I wasn't alone. I was happy that for one night, my family was silent. My little sister, terrified to the point of refusing to talk about what she had seen that night for many weeks. My dad would refuse to discuss it again. asking that I never bring it up. He told me bringing it up was causing it to happen. 7 days later, we moved into our permanent residence. I was the first to sleep there alone with my significant other as we prepared the move. While falling asleep, I was awoken with a violent image thrown into my brain of my father and my own death, of me drowning in a void without end, a place so dark, light had never shone there, and all I could process was the desperation to get out, a desperation and loneliness I had never known. I woke gasping and shaken to the point I was drained of blood in my face. It wasn't a nightmare. I was purposely shown that. For 3 days, I walked in a cold daze, barely able to communicate to my family, staring at them as if watching through a filter. On the third night, that third night was something I could never explain in words. I knew something was coming for me, and that I couldn't escape it. I was a rat in a maze. Around 9 p.m., I refused to enter the home. I was a zombie on my own front lawn, staring at my house, as if it was a trap with my death waiting inside. My father attempted to coax me in, but I refused. I couldn't explain why, but I knew something was already in that home waiting for me, and outside was safer. Hours on, and I was finally pushed into that home, against my will, with me fighting it. I only agreed to stay in the living room with my significant other and sister, as long as someone was awake with me. By midnight, I couldn't keep anyone in the house awake. It was as if they were all under some kind of drug. I could shake and kick them, but they would only wake up for a moment. The first sign of them was around 2:45 a.m. when the entire kitchen lit up, as if someone had turned on their high beams directly into my kitchen. My kitchen was facing trees, no road. No security lights, no explanation. I kicked my sister awake to see the light. She woke up only long enough to see the light, comment on it, and then immediately passed back out. The light blinked out almost as quickly. I was in near panic. I knew I couldn't run, I couldn't hide, I couldn't do anything. So I did the only thing I could do. I waited. 10 agonizing minutes passed, and I hid my face in fear. I heard the chair slide across the wooden floor as if suddenly kicked over. I looked up to see the corner of the living room lit up. I kicked my sister once more, unable to speak. I was so petrified. She didn't wake this time. The light blinked out. I searched desperately for a source of light, anything to logically explain it. When I could find nothing, I hid. I couldn't describe the fear I felt that night. I was convinced I was going to die. I was shaken, unable to speak, frozen, staring with moon eyes at the corner of the room from behind my hiding place by my sister. The empty corner. That's the last I remember. I woke up the next day, unreasonably happy. That unreasonable happiness lasted 3 days. The feeling returned, and I immediately shut it out the best I could. That's when I reached out for help. I called and emailed paranormal investigators, thinking if anyone could help me. It's gotta be the good guys in every scary movie, right? I mean, they're the go-to in every story. The guys come in and give you the answer in this climactic fashion with head spins and vomit and ceiling-crawling kids. I didn't receive any help of the sort. They were just groups of people hobbying their time out with as much ability to help as my neighbor. And while I'm going back and forth in emails and playing phone tag, the experiences are worsening. At one point, I ended up in the middle of the road, dazed in the middle of the night, staring at an oncoming car like it was approaching bird, but a member of my family was there to pull me out of the road. This was followed later with me sitting on my second floor window, playing on it like a child, hanging upside down. Never once in my life did I think of suicide, nor did I then. It was all just a blurry dream. The furthest help I received was from an individual who could also see them. She explained I was gifted to see them. Not only that, but I was apparently cursed. And that was the extent of the help I received. They offered to come out, but every time I called them to set up a time and date, tragedy struck my family and stuff started breaking and falling apart in my home. The ceiling collapsed, wallpaper torn, electrical fuses blown, water pipes bursting, flooding the entire lower level of the house. The oven caught spontaneously on fire, and now we're moving out, but not by choice, but because the home isn't fit for living, especially with winter coming. That's just the stuff we can prove on paper with plumbers, electricians, and renters insurance for stuff that keeps getting damaged. Then there's my family being awoken by voices, doors, objects moving, running to me as if I have an answer for them. So much has happened. I'm exhausted, completely drained. I don't want to fight them anymore. I tried it. It doesn't work. I just want an answer now. Almost 2 weeks ago, I started seeing a place in my head, like back in the trailer when this first started in California, a place in a nature reserve nearby the place I'm staying now, a small body of water with a fallen tree near it, hidden somewhere in the reserve. Just like then, I have a feeling I know where to find it. I know it wants me to go there. I'm constantly drawn to staring in the direction of it. I don't want to. I'm scared beyond belief, but I know this won't end. I want to find help, to find answers, but I couldn't find any. Any attempt will have me thrown in a loony bin. Think a year ago, I was pre-med, focused, studious, experiencing skydiving, vacationing to beautiful places, preparing myself to go abroad, prepared for the waves of the world. Now I'm sitting on my laptop at 4:35 a.m., writing about experiences I could never admit to anyone outside of those closest to me, because I'm losing my mind about what's real and not. Even my fiance was scared away by this. He explained to me that he didn't want his family to be cursed like I am. I wrote to you guys before the first experience. Back when it was still amazing to me because it was just one wow experience after 6 years of nothing, omitting my childhood full of experiences. It's no longer amazing. It's not cool. It's not great. It's not special. It's awful. I'm powerless, lost, and I have no control anymore. I plan to go to the place they want me to. I have to find out what they want. I can't live in fear like this. I'd rather handle it now than live a lifetime as a rat. I'll continue to reach out for help, hoping one of these paranormal groups are actually legit and not just some scary movie hobbyists. I'll also try and post any other experiences. I didn't even cover half. Not even 1/3 of the experiences. Just gonna try. If any of you have any experience with this, reach out to me. I'll give you my contact info and we can talk. I'd welcome anything at this point. Anything over going into the forest. And that's where her story ends, 8 years later, and there's been no new update. The comments in this last post try to give her advice and speculate what this shadow figure could be, but she doesn't respond to any of them. What do you guys think happened to her? Let me know in the comments below. And if a new update comes, I will let you know.